Hello and welcome to the Hibs Observer Monday morning briefing with myself, Liam Bryce, joined by Craig Nisbet to look back at yesterday's 2-1 win over Dundee at Dens Park on the opening day of the Premiership season, and also a wee look ahead to today's Europa Conference League playoff draw, where Hibs will find out who they could face. Sorry, I don't want to count any chickens there. If they overcome Partizan Belgrade in the third round of Conference League qualifying. So a lot to get through today, and just, kind of exciting times in general, joined by Craig Nisbet, and we're going to have a look through all of that and probably a wee bit more by the time we get done as well. But just as always, folks, before we get started, a word for our sponsor. The Hibs Observer is brought to you by S1 Jobs. If it's time to hand in your transfer request, then head over to s1jobs.com and upload your CV today. With thousands of jobs across Edinburgh and the surrounding area, you'll find the one at S1 Jobs. So start your search today. Craig, how are you this morning?
Good, mate. Yeah, chuffed with that win yesterday. So, yeah, all good here.
Yeah, perfect start to the Premiership season for David Gray's side, I would say. I think the big question was, how were they going to react to Thursday night? I think physically and psychologically as well. I think David Gray, before and after the game, he sort of kind of wanted to emphasise how difficult it can be just not to recover physically from those types of games, but sort of emotionally, psychologically, because it takes a toll. It's hard to going 210 minutes against a really good side like Midtjylland and losing out like that. It's impossible just to park that and forget about it completely. So I think Hibs have done well to keep their concentration, keep their focus. Well know there's a good mentality about this side, and they certainly showed that at Dens Park on Sunday. What's your overall verdict on the game before we get into some of the finer details?
Yeah, just like you said, I thought, it was, considering there was only one change from Thursday, Hoylett coming in for McGrath, really pleased with how they handled the game. We got a grip of it really early on. We dominated all of it, really, and probably should have had an extra couple of goals to see that game out. But, even when that goal never came, we still looked pretty resolute, and I wasn't ever really worried we were going to concede. And and even just the way Gray's using his squad at the moment as well, I thought we're bringing players on and it's not disrupting too much of what we're doing as well, which I think is a huge credit to just how we've recruited and just how they've started the season. So yeah, a really good performance and goals at good times as well, just to sort of settle things down. And I think off the back, not just off the back of Thursday, but even the Thursday before, that was a tough 90 minutes as well, in terms of after getting that goal and Midtjylland and how they performed as well. So I think overall we have to be really chuffed with that.
Yeah, I think so. I don't think you can ask for much more, because it's been so sort of well documented how teams in the Premiership who have been involved in European qualifiers, and then a few of them then latterly involved in the league phase of the Europa League or Conference League or whatever, I've then kind of found it difficult to juggle the two different commitments, because I think it's probably something that largely comes with experience of being in that situation and sort of feeling out how to handle it, how best to deal with recovery, the travel arrangements, everything like that all comes into it. So I think that was, to me, it kind of felt like potentially the biggest danger for Hibs, because they're coming up against a Dundee side who they had a poor Premier Sports Cup campaign, and a lot of people are sort of really tipping them for relegation already this season. Obviously, it's very early doors in the season. That being said, it didn't really see awful lot from them yesterday to suggest otherwise. But I feel like the way that they set up, they were happy just to let Hibs centre backs have the ball, sit off, not really pressing. That it could very easily have turned into a bit of a slog, that game yesterday. But I think it's credit to Hibs that you made a good point that the goals came at good times, because I think the longer kind of first half drags on, it starts getting towards half time, you've not made the breakthrough yet, comes into the interval, it's still sitting at 0-0. Second half, I think you would probably have expected Hibs to tire a bit. Probably didn't, factor in as much on Sunday because they had so much of the ball. But getting those goals at a good time was so important, I felt. And they kind of, until Kieron Bowie scored the first goal, it was a kind of half hour where nothing really at all had happened, isn't it? But then it's one chance, one goal, which is what you want to see from him, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, they obviously set up quite similar to us, don't they? They sort of 5 at the back and a couple across the middle, and they're a bit more. They're 2 up top. So yeah, the first. Yeah, and it wasn't really a bad strategy from them to go, well, we'll just sit off them and we'll let Hibs move the ball and we can maybe hit them on. They've got a bit of pace, in their team, but they just never ever evolved from that strategy. Even at 2-1 down with 10 minutes to go, they were still leaving us with the ball, and that's when you could tell that the home fans were getting absolutely irate at that point. But yeah, for us, it was almost a perfect game coming out of Europe. You've got the ball. When you're moving the ball around, you're not exerting as much energy as the team chasing it. So we had a lot of possession. I wouldn't say. I don't think we found it hard to break them down. I think we just the tempo maybe in our play wasn't quite there. We weren't moving it as quick as we could. And if you're gonna, we've seen it when we played St Mirren, who set up similar as well. To beat a team when you're set up the same, you have to move the ball quick and just create these little overloads. And we maybe weren't doing that in the first sort of 10, 15 minutes. And then after that, I think Levitt got a bit more involved in the game. And he's so important in there because if he drops and gets the ball, say from Rocky, it means O'Hora and Iredale can just push that little bit further wide, and we can maybe just create a little 2v1, and Iredale can step forward and he's got a bit of space to maybe hit a switch or maybe commit another player forward to play in behind. And I think that left-hand side became really important in the first half because, Iredale, Obita, Bowie, they were all involved in those first couple of goals. And, I think like the name of the episode's Why Kieron Bowie will be vital. And we spoke about it just after the game Thursday as well, that when you fire that ball across and into the box, he's just so alert. And because he's an out-and-out striker, he just needs 1-2 touches and he'll get that shot away. We've seen that. He loves having a strike at goal. He'll cut inside and his first thought is to hit the target. So important. And, I was thinking if we had started this season, let's just say that was a Kurevich up front and not a Bowie, I'm not sure we would have been going in and 2-1 up at half-time or scoring those goals. And I just think it highlights just how important he's going to be for the campaign.
Yeah, I think what I found most encouraging is if you take not just yesterday, but you take Thursday night as well. I think you kind of saw, how much there is to his game over those two. How much there is to his game over those 2 games. Sorry, I was getting myself tied up there. Because Thursday night, what I'm trying to say is, apart from the goal that he had ruled offside, not a lot for him to latch onto in terms of goal mouth action, in terms of chances. It was more about what could he do in terms of hold up play to try and get Hibs up the park, to try and bring other players into the game, and how much of a shift could he put in to just try and disrupt the Michelin backline. And you saw how well he did that over the course of that game. How he uses his body, how he uses his strength, how he's, for a young guy, there's a sort of maturity about how he uses, his kind of physical attributes. I think sometimes with young players, you can see they've got all the attributes, they've got the gifts, and it takes them up to a wee bit later in their career to actually figure out how to maximise it. But he already seems to have a good understanding of how to play to his own strengths. That was a kind of, it felt to me it was a sort of textbook. Sort of general striker play, textbook performance in general striker play on Thursday, and then Sunday there was a wee bit different, and that he was kind of not really involved in much of the build-up in that first half hour. Didn't really touch the ball much at all, and then the first sort of sniff a goal he gets, it's Hibs are 1-0 up, and then he gets another sniff a goal a couple of minutes later, 2-0 up. So it's, to me, that's kind of encouraging that you can do a bit of everything. Is what that says to me.
Yeah, and we are going to, I think, go back to like the Jack Ross era when we played sort of 3 at the back. The big problem I think he had is we never ever really evolved that setup at all, and we became really predictable in how we played. And I think I'm hoping that Gray, it won't be like that with Gray, and I think by some of the signings and some of the stuff we've been doing in the window and the way we've been playing, I don't think that's the case. But you're right, we can't, in a game like that, if a team are going to come and match us in a shape and sit back, we're not going to be able to get the ball into his feet and turn and let him play off until maybe 60, 70 minutes, or if the game gets stretched by a couple of goals. So we do need to find other avenues. And I think if we can get the ball wide, we know, especially on the left-hand side, if it's going out to Beta and Nicky Cadden, for example, they'll just get the ball out of their feet and whip that into the box. And I think now we've got a striker who can physically go and challenge for that and win it and get in there. But also, it looks like we've got a striker that can sniff out a chance as well, pounce on an error, and we know he's just going to take 1-2 touches and just smash it. He's got a thunderous shot in his finish. For his first, the second goal was great as well, because obviously it's easy to snatch at that shot and hit it over the bar. But even just the finish for the first one as well, just great touch inside and back across the keeper at the opposite corner. It was a really, really good finish. So yeah, he's shown a lot in these opening sort of games of the season, and it was just really pleasing, I think, to also see him play the 90 minutes as well, which is quite a big thing. I'm not sure he's done that for us. No,
that's his first 90 minutes for Hibs, yeah.
So, and yeah, I mean, he did tire, I think, as the game went on. You could see that. But yeah, he's just going to be such an important figure for us this season.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, coming into Thursday night, he could have to show that kind of other side to his game where Hibs are going to probably need him to just be the focal point, the target man, but he'll obviously go into that with a lot of confidence. Just again from the game on Sunday, you touched on it a wee bit earlier on, but the kind of importance of Dylan Levitt, I felt, and breaking down the kind of shape and the block that Dundee had put out. I think he's a player for me who is just really grown into his role in the team. Before we came on, I meant to look at how many. I think he started almost every game. I think, since Joe Newell got injured. I might be a wee bit off with that, but I mean, certainly his involvement now compared to this time last year is significantly different. He seems like a player who, I mean, I feel like I've said this 100 times about him, but his talent and his technical ability has never been in doubt. I don't think you spend as many years as he did playing in the Manchester United academy if you don't have a bit about you. But I think in terms of his all-round game, he seems to be sort of maturing into a really tidy midfielder. I think when he first came, and he came to Scotland, even not just the Hibs, with Dundee United, that he had this kind of impressive highlight reel of the kind of goals from long range, kind of eye-catching passes. And then I think maybe since he's come to Hibs, it's not quite been like that, because I don't know if he played a different role maybe at Dundee United where he was able to get a bit more advanced. We'll still see moments from he can strike a ball. He's got very good technique in that sense, but I feel like a lot of his game now is much more understated, but probably more rounded and more in terms of his contribution. Certainly, I think more important, because he's contributing now more than ever than he has since he signed. I think it was back July 2023. And I just feel he's become really important. Even you kind of felt last season, how much was the presence of Nectar Triantis helping him flourish. In terms of Triantis can, he was a bit of an all rounder in terms of he had the physical attributes as well to go with the technical stuff. Levitt, he's never going to be one of those powerhouse midfielders, but I feel like his kind of general understanding of the role has improved. His positioning and where to be at certain points to pick up loose balls. I think he looks fitter as well. I think for me, he's just a player who seems to have come on leaps and bounds in the past few months.
No, yeah, I thought he was brilliant. It's when the centre halves are knocking the ball across the back three. Obviously O'Hora's got a good range, and so's Iredale, but we really need him on the ball. You see a few times when he can get on it and he just opens his body up, he can hit that sort of diagonal ball for Chris Cadden coming in off that side, or Obita going on the other side of that as well. And he's even got that ability. We're saying it's hard to find Bowie maybe when teams are setting a low block, but he's probably the one player that probably could find a Hoylett or a Bowie or a Boyle just with like a little through ball. And he's certainly got that range in him. And the good thing about him, I think, he's not afraid to try those passes, and even when things weren't going well for him, you could tell he plays the way he plays. And that I thought on Sunday, his little 1-2 touch things, when we regain the ball, he plays so quick and he always plays forward. He's always looking to move the ball forward, which I think is something that is really important for how we play. But even just out of possession, I thought when Dundee won it back, he was so quick at regaining the possession again and pressing, and even then giving away a foul or whatever you need to do in that area. And I think you're right. That's where I think his understanding of the role in the middle of the park has definitely grown. And it's different from this season with Mulligan in there. It's and you see that at the moment we're changing that position around a little bit. We've had McGrath played in there on Thursday, then Campbell went in there, Mulligan started in there. We sort of switched around a little bit in the second half where Levitt sort of stayed as a 6 and McGrath and Campbell came on to play a little bit higher up to push on. So he's had a few different partners come in and play beside him. And I'm presuming we're still looking at maybe adding someone else in there with Newell's injury and the other players that we've not got back after loans. So yeah, I think he's going to be a really important part. And as I said, I think this season, when teams come and sit against us, and if they are going to drop into low blocks, especially at Easter Road, and let us have the ball, then the more we can get him on the ball, the better.
Yeah. Anybody else catch your eye yesterday that you want to single out?
I thought Rocky dealt with a big forward really, really well. It was a good battle, especially towards the second half. And I actually thought O'Hora, I think in the last, he's not done anything, that's been out of this world, but he's just been so consistent. He's won the ball back well. He's looked strong. He's looked quite calm and quite controlled in those areas. So he sort of stood out for me as well. I thought he performed. He performed really well. So. And Obita, I think I said it was nice. It's been nice to see him back in the team. He was out for such a long time, due to sort of having to very patiently bide his time. And I think, he obviously hit the cross in for Bowie. That it won't show up in the statistics for him, unfortunately. But he put the cross in that pinballed about, that Bowie got the first goal, and obviously made a great run in behind and had the shot that McCracken saved that then Bowie followed up with. So another crucial part for him as well. So yeah, I thought those guys stood out alongside Levitt. Quiet day for Boyle on that side as well. And I thought Chris Cadden was sort of playing a bit within himself. I thought he could have maybe went forward a bit more, been a bit braver on the ball. They were the real things I kind of picked up in that sort of second half. But obviously we've had a busy schedule, and the most important thing was just getting the 3 points.
Yeah, it was very much just a go and get the job done type of day for him, but it was very, very comfortable in the end, even with conceding that goal, which came, as obviously from a Hibs mistake, and it didn't really look as if Dundee were going to build any momentum off the back of that, so just very comfortable.
No, they were we were saying off there, I couldn't really work out what they were. You were waiting for them just to kick into life or something to happen, and a lot of pressing and a lot of pressure on us, which I kind of thought was how it was going to go in the last 15-20 minutes, but they didn't really do anything, so it kind of really played into our hands to see the game out.
Yeah, absolutely. Hibs will take that all day long. So just looking ahead to this afternoon, so obviously Hibs are away to Belgrade this Thursday, but as is the case now, the draw for the following round of the UEFA tournaments is made ahead of the current round ties being played. So Hibs are in the third qualifying round. They're going to play Partizan Belgrade over 2 legs in the Conference League, but the draw for the playoff round, which is the final hurdle before the league phase, is going to be made at 1 o'clock this afternoon. So Hibs will know who. It'll be very much narrowed down. It'll be 1 or 2 teams by the time all the ties are finished in the Conference League and Europa League over the next week or so. So I mean, again, I feel like nothing has been particularly kind to Hibs. Even going all the way back to Aberdeen winning the Scottish Cup and taking the guaranteed automatic league phase slot, it's nothing is really. The luck of the draw hasn't really fallen the way of David Gray and his players, and sort of looking at who they could potentially play if they get past Partizan, which is a really hard enough tie as it is, and we'll talk about that in a moment or two. But just while we're sort of touching on the draw, so what basically happens is everybody knows there are seeded and unseeded teams for each round. And basically what UEFA do these days is ahead of the draw is they sort of narrow that down further, and they create these draw groups where there'll be, essentially maybe 5 seeded ties and 5 unseeded, just for example. It can kind of vary from group to group. It's not exactly sure of the process of how they do these groups. There's maybe an element of randomness about them. Sometimes they kind of maybe pull teams together in terms of geographical location. Sometimes they need to keep teams apart if there's kind of particularly volatile political situation. But kind of to get to the point, Hibs are seeded for they would be seeded if they get past Partizan into the next round, and so they've been put into Group 3 of the Conference League draw, which basically means that they could play either the winner of Larne from Northern Ireland against Santa Clara from Portugal, and then they have here, that's a Conference League tie, so it's the winner of that tie, and then above that, there are 3 ties from which a team could drop in from the Europa League. So basically, Hibs could play the loser of Servette from Switzerland, who started off the season in Champions League qualifying, or Utrecht from the Netherlands. They could play AEK Larnaca or Legia Warsaw, the loser of that tie. And then obviously the quirk of these draws is if the other tie is the loser of Fredrikstad and our old friends FC Midtjylland. So basically, if Midtjylland are to lose to Fredrikstad and drop into the Conference League and Hibs get past Partizan Belgrade, then Hibs could be going back to Denmark, which is, I mean, I can't think of too many examples of that happening over the past few years. I'm sure it has happened. I'm sure somebody could potentially tell us. But I think the kind of wider point here is, there are, in that draw group, there are 3 out of the 5 teams who are going to, it could be, are dropping out from the Europa League, which is obviously a higher level of competition. Compare that to sort of Group 2 of the Conference League draw, where in the unseeded section, none of the teams will be dropping out from the Europa League. It's all Conference League ties. So you'd maybe, again, you can't, it's not an exact science, but kind of logic dictates if a team is in a higher level of competition to begin with, they're potentially a higher level side. So I think, again, it's not been particularly kind to Hibs, has it, Craig?
No. It's I think for most Hibs fans, you just laugh and go, it's just our luck with these things. But the experience we've got out of the Midtjylland game and the experience we'll get against Partizan, I'll really stand us in good stead. If you're able to, we pushed Midtjylland really, really far and lost to like an absolute wonder goal, and we could see by the way they were celebrating and how much they had to put into that game. So a few people have said, it must have been a horrible way to lose. That must have been a horrible way to lose, and it was. But actually, I think for going into this tie on Thursday, it'll be a case of, well, we deserve our seat at the table. We've shown that we deserve to be there. We weren't comfortably dispatched by Midtjylland. We pushed them right through extra time, so it should give us that, I suppose, confidence going into the Belgrade. 2 different, a different team, different strengths and things like that. But I think it at least shows that we should be there. We were able to compete. So, and if it's a big if we get through that, that'll hopefully just add to that sort of feeling and growing in confidence. I mean, it would be absolutely bizarre if we got Midtjylland again. That would be one of the strangest things ever. But it seems like if and it goes back to being those big ifs, if we got all the way through and into that group stage, surely that would go down as probably one of the toughest routes to get there since this competition's come about.
Yeah, you would think so. And so obviously we're not overlooking the tie on Thursday. It was just because they've got the draw coming up. I thought I'd explain that first off. But it's a really difficult tie. Again, Partizan seem to be a pretty decent side. You've done a wee bit of research on them this morning in terms of how good a league season they had last year.
Yeah, I mean, you're going back in the last they finished second in 23-24, only losing 7 games across their season, and then last season they just lost 6 games. They're finishing the last couple of seasons on 70 odd points. I think a season or two before that they finished on 98 points. It's always been Red Star, isn't it, that have just pipped them for the title, and each time they win they seem to hit 100 points. So yeah, I think we're up against a team that are very, very used to winning domestically, as in winning league games domestically, and very comfortable on that side of things. So, and they've started their season well. I think they've won their first 2 games this season as well. So, yeah, it's certainly going to be a tough tie and a big atmosphere to go into. I'm sure it'll be a really tough game. Really tough game.
Yeah, they won yesterday, and as you said, you're right. They have won their opening 2 games. Everybody.
And also, sorry, I remember, because obviously we discussed about how Midtjylland had quite a lot of European experience. I think they were similar. I think they've played maybe over 35 plus games in Europe over the last sort of 5 seasons. So you go back to, we are now at 16, maybe, including Midtjylland. So again, they've got a bit of European experience as well that we don't quite have yet.
Yeah, and you're going out to Serbia, which is always going to be a kind of hostile atmosphere. But I suppose again, the positive is, if Hibs can go out there, keep the, again, another, like a 1-1 draw or something that they got against Midtjylland, you'd bite the hand off for that right now. Take it back to Easter Road, it'll be another similar atmosphere. They've already shown that they can push. I'd imagine, Midtjylland are, they are kind of, Europa League level side at the very least, based on their kind of pedigree from the last few years. It's, we're talking there about it being a tough tie, and it is, but it's not, no reason to show any fear, really. Even if Hibs hadn't had that, kind of experience of pushing Midtjylland really far, even before that, there's nothing to fear. But I think now there'll be a belief among the players, among the staff, the management, that they can go and trouble these kind of teams.
I think so, and one of the, we've seen it against, I know Midtjylland created a couple of chances and fluffed their lines in and around the penalty box, but one of the things we've had, especially in the first game, I would say more so away from home, is that we're more than comfortable of trying to do what Dundee did against us, which is just going really compact and saying, fine, we'll put McGrath left midfield, Boyle can drop right midfield, we'll have our 2 centre mids, we'll leave Bowie up front, and we'll just sit 5-4-1, break us down, get balls in the box, we'll deal with them. And yeah, it does shed a bit off your attack and mean that you maybe can't be as potent going forward, but certainly we know that we're capable of going and doing that. And experiences we've had at Celtic Park and away to Rangers, stuff like that, we can go and do it against teams that have played in European competition. So yeah, I think that's something that I'm quite comfortable with a David Gray side going away and doing.
Yeah, because you need to have these different, kind of strings to your bow if you like to play in Europe. You have to be adaptable. There's so many different, kind of scenarios, situations that you can find yourself in. The quality of team can fluctuate from round to round. And we've seen so many times that this is a well coached team. It's a very well coached team, and they've shown that plenty of times already. So I mean, again, we're a wee bit of fatalism here about how the draw hasn't been kind and stuff like that. But there's nothing for Hibs fans or for the team or for anybody really to fear with us. I don't think, it doesn't necessarily mean that Hibs are going to go through. That means they're going to get to the league phase, but I don't think there's any need for sort of trepidation or dread going into this, and I don't think there will be from anyone, to be honest. It's another really good occasion to look forward to, and it's something that's been earned, I think, over the back half of last season. I think David Gray has been keen to point out at times, this is the reward for everybody, not just the players and the staff, but the fans as well. For kind of everything that transpired over last season. So again, it's to be enjoyed, but the players will, they'll have that in mind, but they will want to be the first kind of Hibs side to reach the sort of group stage, league phase, whatever we're calling it these days.
Finally, like, I think, but the squad's in good condition at the moment. I know Nicky Cadden obviously being injured isn't ideal. Hopefully that's more just like a a pull or rather than something more severe. But we've got options off the bench. We even seen that yesterday with Alisana coming on and taking Levitt's role and doing that. And I'm not saying he came on and did anything better than Levitt or whatever, but we've got options off the bench. Collegiate, we've got all these guys that maybe are still looking for game time. That's the other part as well, is I feel like when we go away, we've got options to come off the bench, and we're maybe one or two short, but the squad's in actually not a bad place for so early in the transfer window as well.
Yeah, that's a good point, and one to keep in mind. Hibs are pretty well equipped for this challenge. And we're just going to have to see how it pans out. As I said, the draw's coming up this afternoon. In terms of looking forward, Patrick's going to be going out to Belgrade for us. There'll be preview from HTC and from Belgrade, so there'll be plenty of content coming up. We'll have all our usual game coverage as well. So hopefully, hopefully Hibs will come back with a positive result to take into the second leg. But as I said, do stay tuned. Patrick will be out there in Serbia providing all our usual coverage. So do keep an eye on the website for all that. But for just now, folks, we're going to leave it there. And as I said, we'll be covering live updates from the draw on the website in the next hour, a couple of hours or so. So do keep an eye out for that. If you can't watch it live as it happens, we'll have you covered. Craig, thanks as always for joining us. Thanks for the analysis and insight. We'll be back on YouTube in the next couple of days to hear from Patrick out in Belgrade, and then obviously to review Thursday's tie from the Partizan Stadium. So do stay tuned in for that, folks. But for now, thank you very much for joining us, and we'll speak to you again soon. Cheers.